All right, good Wednesday afternoon, everyone. I'm 10 Tampa Bay Chief Meteorologist Bobby Deskins. This is our midweek weather update. Wednesday, the 14th of May, and as you can see, it's actually fairly quiet out there with weather across west central Florida. We've had a lot of rain, well, we did at least over the weekend, right, and into Monday. But now things are drying out, and it looks like it's actually going to get really dry and really hot over the next several days. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about our local forecast. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the issues that are surrounding our local communities here, because we're getting into the rainy season, we're getting into hurricane season, and we know from last season we had some issues with drainage in neighborhoods and things like that. So the city of Tampa is actually doing a lot to get ahead of the game, or at least try to, right? And Eric Glasser talked to some folks about that. We'll talk about that. And then we're going to talk about the hurricane season, where we're standing right now. Tomorrow they start issuing the outlooks, and I'll explain what those are. They issue those starting on May 15th, and then we'll kind of go over water temperatures, shear, all the things that we're looking at right now, just as if we were kind of starting the season, which is only 2 weeks away. All right, so let's get started with our local forecast. Let's take you outside now. This is I-4 out in Plant City, and you can see just a few clouds. What you're really going to notice over the next next week and a half, is you see those low clouds you see out there developing. That's the daytime heating, but look up above those, that blue sky. You are not going to see a lot of clouds up there up above us, and that is a result of some dry air up there and sinking air. And that air heats up as it sinks. And so bottom line is we're going to get warmer, we're going to get drier, and in fact, we're going to be pushing record high temperatures by the time we get towards the middle of next week. Right now, it's, I dare to say, comfortable out there, right? We're in the mid 80s, low to mid 80s. Some spots are getting closer to the upper 80s. But dew points are in the 60s. Those numbers are going to come back up. So enjoy what we have now. It's not as humid as it's going to get. And we have a little bit of a breeze out of the west, which is coming off the water. The water's really heating up. So really nice day out there. Satellite radar is not really showing you much, just a few of those low clouds developing. And you can see even most of the peninsula is actually very quiet. And I do think all of the peninsula will be very quiet as we go for the next several days. So here's the big picture, and you see that area of high pressure there. This is what's building in now, and really it's actually a large area that's sitting out here over Mexico and the western Gulf of Mexico. And then you can see, here we go, we've got this moisture coming up here. That, what you see from the Bahamas going up almost to Bermuda, Bermuda's right about there, that's the rain that we had on Sunday night and Monday. All right, this is the low that was driving all of that. That's pulling away. And so now the high pressure sitting out here is the one that's going to be building in as we move through the next, not only week, but week and a half. Now, high pressure, as I mentioned, is sinking air. And when it's doing that, it's heating up. In this particular case, we're going to call that a heat dome, because it's a lot of hot air underneath that. And you notice this takes us all the way out through the 23rd, 24th of May, right? It's the 14th now, so a good 10 days out. And it's not really going to change too much. We'll get a little bit of a trough by that time, but I don't see a whole lot of rain between now and then. And what that means is the temperatures get warm, as I mentioned, into the lower to mid 90s. We should be about 88 on average for this time of the year for average high temps. And look at Sunday, 93, Monday, 94, Tuesday, 94, a little bit cool. And look, when I say a little bit cooler, that means going from 94 to 92 from Tuesday to Thursday. And then we're right back up into the mid 90s again. And these numbers are for Tampa, which is actually by the water, of course, where that sensor is. And I stress that because the water temperature is 81 degrees, and that's going to be climbing. We're going to be in the mid 80s by 2 weeks from now, easily, right? And so that the overnight lows will come up. Daytime highs, at least initially, will come up. But when you see 94 on Monday for Tampa, that means if you live in eastern Hillsborough County, Polk County, Hardy, DeSoto, Highlands, it is going to get warm. We're going to be talking 96, 97, 98 degrees for many locations. So yeah, heat wave is on the way. Now, at the same time that we have this high pressure over top of us and higher temperatures, remember, it's sinking air, it also is not giving us a lot of rain. In fact, it's not going to give us much rain at all. That is the forecast amount of rainfall through about the 23rd, and you see the big hole, right? That literally is that heat dome. That's the area of high pressure. Now, 1 or 2 showers here or there, yeah, maybe by Monday and the Tuesday, but nothing that's really going to do any good, to be honest with you. Look at all the rain, meanwhile, that's going to be falling up to our north, across the Midwest, back out through the plains, and then even in the Mid-Atlantic and in parts of the Northeast, right? And in fact, there's going to be a pretty good spout of severe weather going through that region as well. We will not get much weather at all except for the heat. Now, Where's the rainy season? Well, number one, the rainy season shouldn't really arrive until at least around the 25th of May. I've seen it go a couple weeks into June before it even starts, and I think we'll be at least a week into June this year before it starts. This graphic that you're seeing right here basically says when that number, 1.38 on Monday, when that number gets up to 1.75 or higher, we then have enough moisture. What this is showing you, the measure of moisture from the ground all the way up. If you were to put it in a sponge and squeeze it out into a tube, you would get 1.38 inches worth, okay? And that number generally needs to be over 1.75 for us to get those afternoon showers and thunderstorms that we see when we consider what is rainy season, right? Anything below that, you can get some rain. You need a front to help force it. You really need a good strong sea breeze to do that. But generally when you're below that, you don't see a whole lot of rain. When you get above that, you start seeing more widespread showers and storms. And even then, you start to see some heavy rain if it gets really high, 2.0 and higher. Notice Friday and Saturday, that's like the 22nd, 23rd, I think, somewhere in there. Even drier air moves in. So again, that's 1 or 2 days leading up to the statistical start, if you will, of rainy season, and we're not there, and we won't be there. So the National Weather Service office in Ruskin gives us this, I don't say arbitrary dates, but they're kind of average dates. On average, we start May 25th, the rainy season, and we end on October 10th. Those are the numbers there, and that's again why we are not going to get there. So now, Tampa is doing a really good job here of trying to clean things up. And unfortunately, you know, when we had the storms last year, we kind of learned as we went along, for some of us at least, right? We preach a lot of this stuff, but you have to go through it to learn it. And they've done some of that in the Tampa area, and so they're kind of trying to get ahead of cleaning out the drainage so that we don't have as much flooding the next time we have a storm, or even the next time we have rainy season afternoon thunderstorms. Here's Eric Glasser with a little bit more on that.
I've seen them at every corner digging out and clearing up the drains and the sewers and whatnot for drainage.
Marcy Clayman says she's grateful to see workers in her neighborhood. Hurricane Milton sent water right up to her front door.
I mean, I'm hoping we don't have the pervasive flooding that we had. That was pretty scary.
We've been hitting the stormwater maintenance pretty hard.
City officials say they're following through on their promise to clear pipes, ponds, and pavement, digging out debris from culverts and unclogging 7 miles of pipe.
Just in the last month alone, we've removed over 500 tons of debris from our stormwater system.
Debris and trash, 32 tons of it in April, like this air mattress that we watched a work crew pull out of a clogged pipe earlier today.
People had stuff everywhere over the last few months here. Some of it got blown around, some of it got picked up, most of it got picked up, but there's no telling what's in those things.
Progress is also underway on the city's network of 13 pump stations. There were some failures during Milton, so this time around they're installing portable generators and will activate those before a storm even arrives, rather than waiting to see whether they're needed as a backup.
Correct, yeah, it's one less potential point of failure.
So now that's the city of Tampa getting their preps ready to go. You privately should be doing the exact same thing. Do you have a generator at your house? Do you know how to use it? Did it flood during any of these particular storms that we had last summer? You could expect something similar if we had another storm. So again, it is a little bit of a silver lining for having the storms that we had last year. At least we can learn what we need to do and get prepared for the upcoming season. Let's get you to the forecast for this evening. We're looking at quiet weather, as I mentioned, and you can see the planner here. We're falling down through the 80s into the 70s and eventually some 60s for inland locations as we move through the overnight hours. But most areas near the water, I'd just say along and west of I-75, Pinellas and Hillsborough County will be in the lower 70s. Now, Brooksville, Spring Hill, Crystal River. Obviously, the further north you go, a little bit cooler. Even Newport Richey in the 60s, at 67 to start your, what's today? Thursday morning. And we'll have those mid-60s for inland locations. That's your Thursday afternoon forecast, and look at that. That's warmer. We've been about 86 yesterday, 87 or so today. We're going closer to 90. But look at all that sunshine, very quiet. It's mainly a temperature forecast. You can see 90 to 91 for downtown Tampa, 90 in Clearwater, 86 in St. Pete. And then look what's already happened inland. 95 Mulberry and Bartow, Wauchula, and Arcadia. Dare I say a couple spots get close to 100 degrees by the time we get towards Monday and Tuesday afternoon. There's a 7-day forecast. It's going to be really quiet all the way through, but just you can see, look at the top of the screen, the top of those blue bars, and you can see how it just kind of inches up temperature-wise all the way through the middle. And that will actually, if we had a 10-day, it would go all the way out as well, too. I do think we get a little bit cooler Thursday and Friday, but we're still talking 92, 93 degrees for that. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the tropics. Get you back in here. Tomorrow they are going to start with their tropical outlook from the National Hurricane Center. And this is where they look out over the Atlantic basin and they say, this little cloud cover over here, we think there's a little bit of chance of development, and we'll give it about a 10% chance, right? This is the forecast. So let's just look at the numbers. On the left side, 14, 7, and 3. That's the average. Last year, on the far right side, we had 18, 11, and 5. So we were above average. And then look under CSU. You see 17, 9, and 4. That's the forecast for this year. That's pretty close to what we had last year, okay? Now, here's the deal. That means nothing, absolutely nothing about whether we get hit or not. That just means the atmosphere, the conditions in the atmosphere are such that it looks like we could see more storms than we would normally see during an average season, okay? I know the numbers look like last year, but it doesn't mean that we're going to get hit 3 times with a hurricane. All right, so that's the good news right there. Now, this is a look at the tropical update. And so you see that legend at the top of the screen, less than 40% yellow, 40 to 60s orange and red. So what'll happen is throughout the season, they'll start looking at something like this, and then they'll draw a circle around it, and we'll put the 40%, whatever the chances of development are. I do not expect anything. They used to issue these beginning on June 1st, but we were seeing so many storms develop before June 1st in the month of May that they now started during, May 15th, right? So they're going to go halfway through May, and they're going to start it. What we really want to watch for is this area here and cold fronts that sit across and stall out across the Gulf of Mexico. Early in the season, this is where we look for development. And the problem with that is that things that develop here in the Gulf, they tend to come up and out. And that's where we are, right? Later in the season, you start looking more in the Eastern Caribbean, things can come up and out, and then you get the long tracks that can do this, or the long tracks can do this too. Okay, and then we had Milton. Let me get rid of this. Milton in October did this. All right, so the beginning of the season and near the end of the season is what we really watch for anything coming at us out of the Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America. I'm just going to call it the Gulf. How about that? So what happens now as we go through, we'll start watching this. This is just the satellite, right? This is the wind shear. And so that's where El Nino and La Nina come in, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But wind shear blows storms apart. So if you have some, it makes it harder for tropical systems to form. It's good. You want wind shear. And wind shear is different types of wind shear, but basically the wind down the surface is blowing this direction. You go up, it's blowing that direction. You go up, it's blowing a different direction. That's called directional wind shear, and that can make it hard for these storms to form. You could also get, in what happens a lot in the tropics, is you've got wind here at this down to the surface at 10 knots. You go up here at 70 knots, 60 knots. That will blow the storm apart. So as the storm tries to grow down here where there's not a lot of wind, that's fine. But then when it grows up and gets taller thunderstorms and they get up into that wind, it blows the tops right off, and that stops the organization, and that stops the growth of those storms, and so we don't get development. The brighter colors that you see here, this is a current look at the wind shear. Look at all that. That is a ton of wind shear. Now, as I mentioned, we're watching the Western Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico for development, right? You're not going to get development under these wind shear conditions. Great news. What does this look like in 2 weeks when the season starts? A month, month and a half, right? This will change, and we do expect to see wind shear here this time of the year, but we also expect it to lighten up by the time we get into June. And that's one of the reasons why the tropical season is when the tropical season is. So right now, just looking at all that out there, we actually look pretty good. Water temperature, let's talk about that. So water temps for tropical systems have to be 80 degrees or higher. And that warm water basically acts like gasoline to a fire, right? If a tropical system moves over water temperatures that are less than 80, you'll see it weaken pretty quickly. So 80 is the magic number. And it has that warm temperature, 80 temperature, has to do with evaporation of the water and going into the air and providing basically energy to make the clouds and the storm, right? So if you look back out here now, we are right along the immediate coast. We're sitting in the about 80 to 81 degree range. But most of the the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of America, the Gulf is actually on the warm side down south. The northern part is below 80 degrees. So remember the rain that we had last week. Leading up to Sunday and Monday's heavy rainfall, there was a stalled frontal boundary across the northern Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America, Gulf. If that water was 80 degrees or more, we would watch because a low developed across it. We didn't really point out that much because it wasn't tropical, but that's what happens out over water with those stalled frontal boundaries. If that water was warmer over the Gulf, that low could have been tropical, and it could have intensified a little bit more. Didn't expect it to happen this time of year, especially with those water temperatures, but all of this is going to warm up, and with that heat dome coming over top of us the next week and a half, all of those numbers will warm up. Okay, so we do expect most of the Gulf to be close to 80 degrees by the time we get to June 1st, so 80 degrees or higher. Let's put it that way. Now, go back out to that graphic again, because if you look at what's coming up between Cuba and the Yucatan, that's the warm water coming out of the Caribbean, right? And then there's what's called the loop current, which comes up through there. And so we're talking about this right here. The loop current comes up, goes down, and it's actually part of the Gulf Stream, okay? That, when storms come up and they get over top of this water right in here, they really strengthen. And we saw that with Milton, we saw that with Helene. You basically see it with any storm that moves out over top of those numbers. The numbers out into the Eastern Caribbean, I should say, about average for this time of year. If anything, they are running 1 or 2 degrees above normal. This area that's sitting out here is a little bit cooler, and that's that water temperature I was talking about, and we'll show you that coming up here in just a little bit. Right now, Emerald's got something for us. Emerald?
I'm 10 Investigates Emerald Morrow. Knowing what to do after a storm means being prepared before it hits. This hurricane hack will help get you organized. First, gather all your documents, then put them in a safe space. A watertight container is ideal. If everything is online, know your passwords and take screenshots of documents just in case internet signals are spotty. Also, review your policy. Make sure you know what's covered, what's not, so you don't get any surprises after the storm. And make sure you have money to cover your deductible. After the storm hits, contact your insurance provider immediately and take pictures and video of all the damage. Make sure you get everything from all angles, close up and far away. Even better, take pictures of all your items before the storm as well. If you have to make purchases, make sure you save those receipts. You might be able to get reimbursed depending on your policy. That's why it is so important to know what's covered. Experts also recommend making those temporary repairs like boarding up or putting tarp over your roof if you can do that safely so damage doesn't get worse. But consult your policy before you hire a contractor. And remember, even if you do have homeowners insurance, it won't cover flooding from hurricanes. You need a separate flood policy for that. So please, don't wait until a storm is coming because flood insurance typically takes 30 days before it goes into effect.
And they won't write policies if they have a named system out there most of the time too. So you can't just do it. If you got a feeling about that one that's forming, you got to get it done now. It is a lot to do. There's a lot to think about, and it's better to do it now when we don't have anything going on out there versus when you're kind of stressed out because there's something heading our way. So one of the most important things that we stress here is have a plan. Know what you're going to do. Know your evacuation zone. If they ask you to evacuate, A, B, C, D, do you know which one you live in? That is your responsibility. All right, you need to know that. Welcome to Florida. That is part of living here in Florida. If you are asked to evacuate, it is because of storm surge, most likely. Right? If you live in a mobile home, we don't want you in that during a hurricane either. You got to go somewhere else, something sturdy. But we want you to run from the water and hide from the wind. So we're talking an evacuation plan, right? Very top. You need to know now where you live because, hey, if they want to evacuate zone B, where am I going to go? You're going to drive to Orlando? I wouldn't. If you got a buddy that lives 10 miles inland, that's where I would go. So you're not on the roads, burn a lot of gas and a lot of traffic with the people that are crazy because they're all worried about the storm coming, right? So that's part of your plan. Then you start talking about your disaster supplies. That's part of the plan. Where do I keep those? When do I get those? You get some now. Keep getting some every time you go to the grocery store and stick them aside and don't use those. Put them in a special container so the kids won't get into it, right? Get your radio going. Know how you're going to get alerts. get our app. 10 Tampa Bay's got a great app for that kind of stuff. You can watch our programming, our live tracking of the hurricanes on your phone, just with that app. You don't even need cable, you need nothing, right? You got a phone, you got internet, you're good to go. That's one of the great things to have. Cash you want, obviously, Emerald was talking about that as well. And of course the insurance checkup that she was just telling you about. That's something you really want to get done now. And not put that off, because that's something that takes some time. Communication plan. Talked to somebody today. I was doing a presentation. They said, well, you know, they couldn't talk to her sister for 48 hours. And it's good to have contact outside of the disaster zone. So if Tampa's going to get hit, for instance, my brother lives in Gainesville, my mom lives in Maryland. So my mom in Maryland is our contact. If I can't get a hold of him, I can usually at least get a hold of my mom, because I'm assuming she's got power. It's not a big deal. It's in Maryland. He can do that as well, and so I can find out that he's okay just by calling my mom. Oh yeah, I talked to him. He said he's fine, and that kind of thing, right? Strengthen your home. That can take some time as well too, so you want to be thinking about what you can do around your house. Trees that are right next to your house that can affect you, you want to make sure those are cleaned up very well. Think about flooding. If you've had very heavy rainfall and you've had some flood in the past, that's something that you're going to want to keep an eye on and mitigate. You know, French drains, that kind of thing. Anything that can help you avoid getting water in your house. All right, now let's talk one more thing here. Two more things, the water and El Nino, La Nina. The water temperature anomaly, as I mentioned, is 1 to 2 degrees above average. This is what that looks like on a graph, right? You can see it's not terrible, but it's warmer than average. We don't want that, right? We'd want this to be cooler than average. When you look out in the eastern Atlantic, it is cooler than average. That's good news, but it's starting to warm up. So I'm talking about this area right out over in here. You can see it's a little bit cooler. That's a little too far to the north. We're not really talking that. We're talking about this area here. This has warmed over the last 7 to 10 days. So initially last week and a half, 2 weeks, we were looking at it going, oh, it's a nice little cool pool of water sitting out here. There's still some left, but again, it's starting to warm back up. And again, the underlying bit of all of this, wind shear or not, if you've got warm water, the whole reason we have hurricanes in the Atlantic or anywhere really is that heat, that intense heat that falls near the equator around the globe has to be spread out, and Mother Nature's way of doing that is boiling up storms, and then they travel to the north and they take a lot of heat energy with them. So it's literally just kind of bubbling over, and the more heat you have in the water, the more bubbling over you would expect, right? That would be, bubbling over means hurricanes. So there are other things that go to this, but that's the main driver. So if you do have a year with a bunch of wind shear, it's not constant wind shear, right? So sometimes, 4 or 5 days you don't have as much shear. You got warm water like that, you got to watch those 4 or 5 days for development. So it's an underlying factor that we always look for. Now, the ENSO, or La Nina versus El Nino. Let's see if this pops up here for me. Basically, and it might not. That is that water temperature that is off of the west coast of South America, okay? I'm going to fast forward through a couple of these, see if it pops up here. That determines whether or not we have El Nino or La Nina, or a neutral phase, which is something in the middle, okay? Right now we are in neutral, and the forecast models, which I'm trying to get it to show you here, right here, basically are suggesting that we will be in neutral through the season. Last year we were in La Nina, all right? And it's not gonna pop up here, but last year we were in La Nina, and we had some wind shear, but we didn't have a lot, and we had 18 named storms. This year we're going to be in neutral. If we had an El Nino, we'd expect more shear and less storms, lower numbers of storms, which would be great. But that doesn't matter. It only takes one storm, right? 18 named storms, right? Fine. It only takes one to do the damage. So that's still an issue. This year, I think in the heart of the season, August, September, and October, we will be looking at basically neutral conditions. And then the second next best chance would be La Nina. And then El Nino is kind of down here. We want El Nino to be the best chance, but it's just not going to happen. So compared this upcoming season to last season, that's why the forecasts are very similar. It's not that much different, so it's something that we'll have to watch all the way through. Those forecasts are updated basically monthly, and what we're doing is just watching that water temperature in the western area off of South America along the equator, and that sets into motion this whole wind episode that actually affects the Western Pacific as well. And that is all part of El Nino and La Nina. It's not just those water temperatures, but when we look at the water temperature, we get an idea of what else we're looking for in the winds, and that shifts the weather patterns around. That's why we have drier winters during La Nina here in Florida, or cooler and wetter winters during El Nino here in Florida, and that passes over into the hurricane season as well. So guys, I go around, I do lots of talks. I've been doing a bunch this week, and it's hard to talk hurricanes after what we've been through. And because I know a lot of people are just still recovering. You know, we'll get through this season. Will we get hit? We don't know right now. Obviously, we know we'll see maybe 18 named storms somewhere in there. NOAA's going to have theirs out on the 22nd, and they'll probably do something like 17 to 20. They do a range when they issue their forecast, and of course we'll let you know here at 10 Tampa Bay. But just expect it to be a little bit above average, right? Where the storms go has nothing to do with those numbers. There is some indication that the high pressure that steers those, that's out over the Atlantic, could be a little bit further to the east. And if that were the case, we may see more storms recurve in the Atlantic. That would be the best case scenario. But we just don't know that. And so we know now when the season is. We know now is the time to get prepared. And that's what we should be doing right now. We appreciate you guys following along with us here at 10 Tampa Bay. You know we'll keep you informed, prepared, and connected, and we'll carry you through the storm. So stay right here, and if you have any questions, anything like that, please reach out to me on all of my social media platforms. Bobby Deskins Weather on Facebook's a good place to start. All right, guys, thanks for joining us for our Wednesday midweek weather update.